Hey Tom, you are live on the line with Promise and Owen. How are you tonight?
Real good, thanks.
What did you want to talk to us about tonight? It says here you want to talk about historical evidence of Jesus. Is that right?
Yes.
Awesome. Let's hear it.
So I grew up in the church, so I have my Christian belief of Bible. And over the last 30 years, that definition or idea of Bible has changed. The translation from the original into English, a Q source, and extra biblical.
Yep. We see Bible translations change a lot for sure.
So recently, in 2016, a book was published called A Shift in Time by Lena Einhorn.
Okay, unfamiliar with it, but go on.
So thank you for saying that, because it's relatively new, and that helps me a lot. So basically, she uses Flavius Josephus and his Greek history as extra biblical source.
Right.
And she says Josephus is a Q source.
Okay. Yep. I understand.
So some atheists that I talk to say that disproves the Bible, and other people are very curious about her new theory.
Okay. I've researched this area a little bit, so I may not be the best person to ask about it, but to my knowledge, the Q source is a source that basically the gospel accounts pulled from, or other parts of the Bible pulled from, because there's a common source. I'm not sure how Josephus's writings would have been the common Q source, because I don't think he was even a Christian. I think he was Jewish. I mean, I don't think he followed Jesus or was interested in him. I think he was Jewish, was part of the Roman military for a time, then went on to become a historian, or he was a historian, wrote all kinds of stuff, right? If I'm not mistaken. And he wrote about Jesus a couple of times, but Christians tend to um, pack in additional times where there are absolute 100% for sure forgeries. He did not write some of this stuff. So I don't know about her theory of it being Q. That doesn't sound logical or right or even possible, since he wasn't like writing about this specific thing. But yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just not well versed enough on the subject.
So 3 months ago, I would have agreed with you, but having just bought the book and read it, I don't want to say I disagree with you. She presents things in the book which you haven't read that challenge what you're just saying.
And what was her name again?
Lena, Lena, Einhorn, Einhorn.
Okay.
Tom,
A shift in time.
what is it about this book? Like, what did it convince you about Jesus?
So in a big general way, there's what's called the synoptic problem. And many atheists that I talk to say they don't believe in Jesus because of the contradictions in the Bible, specifically the New Testament, specifically.
But Tom, let me get clarity on this.
Yeah.
When you say believe in
Sure.
Jesus, do you mean believe that Jesus ever existed, or believe that he is a God that is still alive and well as far as a God can be?
Sure. So I'm doing it in a big general way, because I'll ask 10 atheists that question and get 15 answers.
Right.
So
that's because
for me,
us atheists only agree on one thing. If you ask somebody if they're an atheist, the only thing it means we share in common is a disbelief in gods. So we all have,
Sure.
I don't even know necessarily what Owen's take on the historicity of Jesus is. My take is I don't really care. I care if Jesus is a God. I care if Jesus performed these supernatural things as a God. I care if he actually performed
Fair.
supernatural things, because maybe he wasn't a God, but I still would like to know if something supernatural ever happened. So that's if this is more about the historicity of Jesus, that's not so interesting to me. But are you saying that this book made you believe that Jesus is a God that currently like is worthy of worship and worth believing in the
Yes.
current existence of?
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
so it is the go ahead, Owen.
I was gonna say I just looked into her out of curiosity, and it looks like she's considered a scholar in the field, but she's she's considered very controversial and unconventional, and does not
Yeah.
represent the scientific consensus in the field. So I would take it with skepticism. But
Yeah.
as Promise said, either way we look at it, I actually, I think the sign or the historical consensus is Jesus did probably exist. So that's just what I go with, because I'm not an expert on this. Got to defer to experts. So I think Promise and I probably agree on that. But how does this get
Yeah.
you to Jesus was real and he was performing miracles and all that stuff? How do we get there?
So, in a big general sense, my personal opinion is Jesus did not perform miracles, or the things that he did are not supernatural. There could be a scientific explanation for it.
Okay.
But I do believe, it's my opinion, that Jesus is God, or one of many gods.
Okay.
Okay,
So
but,
go ahead.
but why do you believe that a God exists at all?
So there's two questions going on there. I grew up just accepting it without questioning it. And then after college, I started to look for more evidence. And one of the big challenges is in the Bible, the genealogy of Matthew and the genealogy of Luke, and the birth story of Mary and Joseph going to Egypt. There is a very strong contradiction, or a very strong chronological timeline of Jesus being in Egypt and getting back to Jerusalem. That synoptic gospel problem and Q source is addressed in the book A Shift in Time, and she says that Jesus went from Jerusalem as a young child back to Egypt by himself. And
I'm
then
so sorry I
Jesus
keep interrupting you, Tom, but I'm just getting a little concerned that the answer is you believe there's a God because you believe the Bible, and I think you're explaining to me why you believe the Bible right now. But I'm still not understanding how we get to the belief in the existence of a God. We don't even have to get to why you believe it's the Christian God. It's just because there's all kinds of books that are amazing that have all kinds of things, but I'm still really not understanding how we get to the belief in a God. Maybe I'm missing something, and maybe Owen's picking it up. I don't know.
Yeah. So let me clarify. I have my personal opinion. I have the Bible as a source that has contradictions, and I have the work of Josephus written in Greek that tries to harmonize and become a secondary source that helps provide evidence for Jesus being one of many of these Jewish rebellious uprisers.
Okay.
But Jesus is.
Go ahead, finish up there.
Well, Jesus was one of three people crucified on a cross.
Right. Okay.
But Jesus was the only one who had a sign over his head.
Okay. So it sounds like you just believe in the Bible, and it sounds like the reason that you believe it is because because of Josephus and things. The writing A Shift in Time, to my knowledge. But like I said, that's a controversial opinion that pretty
Okay.
much nobody
Okay.
else holds. So I'm skeptical of it. Let's just assume, let's take a new starting point, assuming that, since that hasn't been proven, let's just say that's not correct for the sake of argument. Is there something else that gets you to the idea that Jesus was, a god or whatever?
Again, I'm using three things: my
Okay.
personal experience reading the Bible. The second is a shifted time and these brand new ideas that are controversially being presented, and the writings of Josephus as a secondary source.
But Tom,
Those
do you
three
have
things
any
all.
is there any
Uh,
evidence for the existence of any gods outside of your opinion that you've reached based off of these books that have swayed you to believe that they are true? Like, is there any evidence outside of these claims that are made in these books that point to them being true? Because to
well,
me, all you've presented us with so far are
yeah,
claims, and
okay.
I'm just waiting for any evidence.
Um, After 2,000 years, no, I'm sorry, I don't have any other evidence.
Yeah, do you see how that's, like, super unconvincing and makes me think that there's
Yeah,
no
well,
reason to believe any of that's true?
I empathize with you, and I just enjoy reading books, and I found these to be very convincing for me personally, and I guess we have to leave it at that.
Yeah, and we can leave it at that, that's fine. I'm just, like, I also love to read, and there's so many books that I read that are so interesting, and books about other books that are interesting. But that doesn't make me automatically believe that the things in the books actually happened and are true and impact reality and impact whether I think a God exists or not. So I'm still trying to get to understand why you, Tom, believe that these things are real outside of the fact that you just read some interesting things. Like, how do you usually
Um,
decide if something is true or not? If you read about it and you like what you read, or what is your method for determining what is true?
you're the first person to ask that question, so I don't have a simple, concise answer. But it's the same, in general, it's the same way I distinguish between Abraham Lincoln and Batman. There's 10 or 15 questions that I ask myself, and I compare the literature to other kinds of literature. And
What would be one of the
this
biggest
reach,
reasons why you don't believe that Batman is real and you do believe that Abraham Lincoln is? Like, what's one of the biggest
I
reasons?
believe, well, it's making a distinction between being a fictional character and being a historical figure. It's the difference between believing that Aesop was a real person who wrote about talking animals. I don't believe animals talk, but I believe Aesop wrote his fables.
So, okay, so let me ask this. There's a book, I think it's called Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer. I think that's what
Yeah,
it's called.
I
Something
know,
like
I've
that.
read it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So how do so that's a I think it's I saw the movie. It's really fun. I want to read the book. Um and I think we can look at things like that and be like, well, that's silly. Like we know vampires, like we don't have any reason to believe that vampires are real. So we can pretty much take away that part already and look at. But it is fun that we threw in an actual historical figure in there. So when reading the Bible, I understand. I have atheist friends that are scholars of the Bible, and they find all of this so interesting, and they find other takes from theists or from non-theists takes on the Bible so fascinating. But when reading this Bible, they don't read it and think, therefore there must be a God. That would be to me the same as reading Abraham Lincoln the Vampire Slayer and being like, well, there must be vampires then, because everything else in this is so interesting and compelling. And I do know that Abraham Lincoln is real. So the rest of this, why are we deciding that something as big as the existence of a God, which I would think there would be other evidence for outside of the Bible, why are we taking that? Like, why is that your reason for being a theist?
Because I've studied Egyptian history, and there are many pharaohs that claim to be God. and many of the Greek emperors, they claimed that they were God. And Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great not only are names in history books, but they have a burial plot with their name on it, and
So there's
have
evidence.
their name
There's
written in stone. And
we can
so
look
there's
back.
lots of evidence.
You can hear me, right? I just
I'm
want to
sorry.
make sure I'm audible.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, good. I was gonna say, I'm sorry. There's a lag, a delay. So just give me a little slack. I was gonna say that you're saying that there's evidence for those things, hard evidence that you can go look at, and look at like the historical records, look at things that Abraham Lincoln wrote down or whatever. Um, I I'm with you that Jesus was a real person. We can say that for the sake of argument because, that's the historical consensus, but there's no evidence of any of the other claims of this stuff. In fact, there is no evidence of a census. If you remember in the Bible, Jesus was supposed to be going back to I'm sorry, Mary and Joseph going back to their homeland or whatever, their historical homeland for a census, and that's how they got Jesus from Nazareth to Bethlehem before he was born, and then back to Nazareth. There was no census. That didn't happen. There is no evidence of anything like that ever. I don't know who my um, historical ancestors are from 1,000 years ago. I sure as hell don't know where they lived, so it just none of it makes any sense at all. And all of this is kind of being baked into the belief system is the problem. So for the sake of argument, I will accept that Jesus is real. How do we get to he is God? How do we get to there's no evidence for any of it. Is still
Tom, are
online?
you there?
Yeah, I was waiting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm done.
I get your frustration. In my opinion, or my point of view, I make a distinction between an agnostic and an atheist. That's why when
Okay.
people press me for my theological beliefs, I identify as a monotheist because I reject the Greek pantheon. I reject
Okay.
the Hindu pantheon.
But
Yep.
Tom, I still
That
don't feel like you're really answering our question, because we're still trying to figure out why you believe that these things are true outside of the Bible. I guess I'll try to ask this way. Are there claims about Jesus in the Bible that you do not believe are true?
Recently, the miracles.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Yes, you did say that. So why? So you think that part isn't true, but you think that Jesus is a God. What made you determine which of those is true and which one isn't?
So your question is asking me to explain 25 years of my life and my journey as a person on Earth. So I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit there.
Yeah. Sorry. So why do I like banana cream pie but don't like asparagus? I don't know.
Oh
It's strange to have somebody ask me that, and if I had more time to think, I could give something, really clear and concise.
And that's fine. If for you this is more based on just faith and you just believe it because that's how you are and who you are, then you know what? I'm happy to end the call on that and on that spot, unless Owen has other questions. I think I'm just curious if you think that other people should believe this as well. Then I'm curious. Then that's why we get to the okay. Why? Why should we believe it?
and I'm trying to explain the difference between me being a child and just taking it because they say so, me questioning Jesus as a real person in light of feeding 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and finding a historical, real person that historically was crucified on a cross with the title King of Jews put over his head.
How do you know that that actually happened? How do you know that that title was physically put up over his head?
Because of sources outside the Bible, because of the work of Flavius Josephus.
Did he write about that? I don't know about
I'm
that.
not,
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
that he
And-
did.
and-
Even still,
So
let's get to the
you're
part.
backing me in a corner.
We're just asking you questions, Tom. We're just trying to get to something. This is I thought we're having a nice conversation. If you don't want to have the conversation anymore, we don't have to. That's totally fine. I'm offering you several outs. But I'm just trying to get to the I'm trying to help you convince me, and we're still having a hard time
Okay,
getting there.
well,
Because I'm not following, and that's okay. But if you do think this is something we should believe, let's figure out good reasons why Owen and I should agree with your perspective that Jesus is God. And for me, we haven't even got to the point of why should I believe there is a God? And I'm just trying to connect all these things, because putting a sign, even if you could convince me 100% that we know without a doubt this sign was hung up over someone's head when they were crucified that said that, and if you could convince me that that had never happened before in history, even still, you would have to then convince me that it wasn't a joke, that it wasn't, that it actually meant anything at all. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand your question. And unfortunately, I'm not the person to do that. If
And that's
the callers
fine. Like I
before
said,
me couldn't do it, I don't see why I'm going to do it.
I'm always waiting for the person that's gonna show up with something I had never heard of before, and I'm ready for it. I'm waiting. I have proven in my life that I am willing to drastically change my mind when presented with a good reason to. I changed my whole entire life because I realized that I didn't have a good reason to keep believing what I did. So I'm happy to change my beliefs again. Like, I've done it before, I'll do it again. I'll change everything. That's fine. I'd make a lot of money too if I did that. Can you imagine the book deal I'd get?
Right.
But it hasn't happened yet. So Tom, do you want to just leave this at, we're at 22 minutes now. Do you want to just leave this at, you believe on faith, and maybe you'll call back when you have a good reason to give us to why we should believe as well?
Let me try and do it this way. Step one is making a distinction between as George Washington and Spider-Man. Step two is what philosophers call the ontological philosophy, where I'm making a distinction between Zeus and Mercury. How do I prove that they're a god?
Let's get to your first point.
And step
real quick,
three,
though,
should
Tom.
you worship it? Well,
sure.
Just because I prove it's God, you don't have to worship
Tom,
it. It doesn't bother me.
For you. Based on your first point that you said, let's determine, what did you say, between George Washington and who?
And just randomly grab a comic book hero. It doesn't.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go with Spider-Man. Tell me this: how much would your life change on a day-to-day basis if you found out that George Washington wasn't really actually a real person?
It would be confusing. It'd be hard at first, but I think I would come to deal with it.
How much would your life change if you discovered that a God didn't exist?
If you erased, gosh, I can't think of one of those emperors, but one of those Egyptian pharaohs who said, "I am God."
But Tom, if you discovered that no gods exist whatsoever, would that change your life? and how you live your life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And if it was proven to me that without a doubt there is a God, that would change my life. I'd spend a good amount of time trying to figure out exactly which one and how many, first of all, and what I need to do about it. But
Yeah.
that's way more. That's why this is such a bigger deal than George Washington. Because to me, it's like, okay, well, that's shocking. History books were wrong about something. Like,
But
okay.
but that's
But
the
this is a
reason.
bigger deal. So Tom, what I'm getting to, because I'm wrapping up this call, because I do see we've got other people on the line now. But what I'm getting to is we need good reasons to believe something as large as a God. That is, as you and I both agreed, a life-changing fact if it were proven to be fact, or if it were proven to be not fact. So, or proven to be like a fact that God doesn't exist at all. So, to me, that's why when you call back, which you're welcome to, I'll be hosting Tuesday night on Chewed Gum. I need solid, good reasons to believe that a God exists, not just reading the Bible, because I did that. Not just reading books about the Bible. I did that. I need reasons to believe that a God exists in general. Owen, do you have any more to add before we let Tom go?
No, I think that's good. That wraps it up pretty well. It sounds to me like the reason for believing it is because, it's a very emotional kind of thing that you've always believed in. And that's okay, but it's not like you have your experience, but I don't have that experience. So it's not something that I don't think you can convince me with anything that you've got. But that's okay if you have it. I just don't think there's reason to believe it. That's all.
Good night.
All right. Thanks,
Okay,
Tom.
thanks.
Have a great night. Bye bye.
Also, he mentioned banana cream pie, and I just realized I had that in my fridge. Totally forgot. I'm
Oh,
so excited.
I'm so jealous. That's one of my favorite desserts. That's
Same.
solid.
Hey, it's Jimmy Snow here. I'm the executive producer on the line with a fun fact. Did you know 100% of the hosts of this channel enjoy eating? It's true. And if you would like to help contribute to their ongoing addiction, you can do so by going over to Patreon or becoming a channel member. There are show-specific, host-specific tiers. Those are awesome. But also, you can leave a super thanks with a special little highlighted comment. You can like, comment, and subscribe. All of those will help fill our whittle bellies. By the way, check out some of this content over here. Algorithm, what next?